I kind of have this uh, vague memory of me taking the training wheels off, and like I think it was either my sister. I think my sister were on one side and my dad were on the other side, and they kind of like wheeling me, like or like steering me through the garden. And I don't know if I've dreamt this or not, but I just kind of remember me like they kind of steering me onto this trash can that I just crashed into, and then um, yeah, like I think that was one of the earliest ones because that's I think that was when I took the training wheels off. We're like on this one trip, and I took the training wheels off, and I don't know. I probably just dreamt it, but it's this memory that I have, like of being where we were and pedaling a bike around.
Brought to you by Thule, this is You Inspire Us, inspiring stories about all things bike. I'm Elliot Jackson, a bike ambassador for Thule, and today I'm speaking with Emil Johansson, Slopestyle's greatest of all time. In the past year alone, Emil has had the perfect season, winning all four Crankworx stops and claiming his fourth World Championship title. His current 13 wins makes him the most successful slopestyle champion in the history of the sport. Emil, welcome to You Inspire Us. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
I mean, you've had this like really good year, amazing year. Do you have maybe like three personal highlights that you could share with us so far?
It's kind of hard to pick and choose from the highlights because there's many very big ones for me this year. Besides just competing, I moved into a house and I've done like a bunch of things on my private life or a bunch of things in my private life as well that has been big achievements for me. Um, but to be able to kind of work around it and still stay on top for the season has been one of the biggest achievements, I gotta say, because I did underestimate how much of a stress it is to move into a house and get out of the old one and then do all this while the contest season is up and running.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny to hear you say that about like, moving into a house being stressful compared to, winning all of these slopestyle titles. And I mean, I guess the combination of the two, but maybe you could start by explaining what slopestyle is to somebody who's maybe only seen a couple of clips of you on Instagram.
Slopestyle is, I would say, a very advanced discipline in mountain biking. Kind of the sport kind of had taken a lot of inspiration from uh, other disciplines like snowboarding and skiing, as well as BMX and skateboarding, and kind of mix it all together. And we do our own thing, but on two wheels instead, down a mountain that is prepped with a course that involves wooden lips, wooden features of all sorts, as well as dirt landings and whatever people can imagine, really. And we get scored on the top to bottom run, and we try to do the most technical run we possibly can and have fun while doing it.
So what was it that drew you to that in the first place?
Ooh, it's kind of just been a domino effect of like getting on my first bike when I was, I don't know, 4 years old, and then the internet kind of popped up, and I was able to search the web on YouTube and find other professional mountain bike riders that did dirt jumping. That was kind of the main discipline name at that time around. It was strictly dirt jumping, which was just a bit smaller jumps than we do nowadays. Tricks definitely weren't as technical, but still a lot of really great riders from that era, and slopestyle and dirt jumping kind of just became a like slopestyle just became a thing, I would say, when I was like 11. And it was like, well, that's what everyone doing, that's what I want to do, like it looks sick. And one thing led to another, and in 2016 I did my first Crankworx event, and since then I've been competing on tour every year more or less. So it's just, I don't know, the path is, it wasn't like a clear path for me to choose. Like it wasn't like I could just go to the local football field and play soccer there and kind of get picked up to a higher division and then kind of climb the ranks that way. Like it was a lot of you got to be very independent if you want to make it in mountain biking.
That's it's fascinating that you say that you have to be independent because I kind of had that same, I guess, thought. Like there wasn't a lot of people riding downhill near me, and we talked to Martin Soderstrom, and it seems like there's been so many Swedish riders coming out of, or sorry, Swedish slopestyle riders, like slopestyle riders coming out of Sweden. Did you have people to look up to at the time, or like how did the introduction even happen?
Mm, Martin definitely, like if we look at Sweden as a selected country in this question, Martin has been the number one biggest influence for my whole generation. I would say, like he showed that it was possible to be from Sweden and show up to the big competitions and be competitive. Um, and then there's been many people following his path. Like when I grew up, Max Fredriksson and Anton Thielander was like the up and comers that were following in Martin Soderstrom's footprints. And then it's just kind of been an evolution of riders. And
Hmm.
I feel like we have a really strong and high level of all the riders that come from Sweden. We do have the mountain bike gymnasium here, which Martin actually is coaching at. That's definitely been a big help to like get kids to stick to biking even when they get older, and there's uh, more like other things in life that might be more interesting, like going out and partying and stuff. And I feel like when you're 15 to 18, that's kind of when most people drop out from their passion. And yeah, I think it's very rare the way that the gymnasium has been like this path uh, for Anton before me and many other Swedes to pursue mountain biking as a living. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
It is, yeah, it is like super super cool. I mean, even for me in a completely different discipline, like Martin, and I think a lot of the Swedish riders have been like such a an inspiration. I I mean, it's fascinating to me that there are so many different paths you can take in slope style, and I guess like you mentioned dirt jumps and stuff like that. Is there something that, or maybe like what piece of slope style is the most interesting? Like what makes it the best discipline in cycling for you personally?
It's many different things, and I would say one of the biggest things that attracted me as a kid was the creativity that I could have and still pursue something that I found really enjoyable. Because when I grew up, like I was never into like I just couldn't. I There were many things that just didn't appeal to me, like running a certain distance in a certain time just wasn't appealing to me. It just seemed so
Yeah.
brain like I I wanted to create things, and I just felt like running from A to B wasn't really allowing me to pursue much in my own imagination. And with biking, I felt like it's a multi-diverse sport where I got to be really on top of my coordinations, as well as really freeing my mind and open to play with new ideas and things like that. But that's kind of been a realization that has happened later on in life. Like that definitely wasn't a thing when I grew up. It was just more like I found it was cool and more than anything, a lot of fun to do wheelies on my bike and I don't know, just jump a curb.
I mean, it's wild that there can be this creativity. Well, I think that you almost have to be at a certain level for there to be creativity, because when I look at slopestyle, I'm like, you know, okay, you can do a 360, you can do a tail whip, you can do a backflip. Did you realize that there was creativity from the very beginning? Um, and I guess like how do you think about it now? Like, are you actively kind of going out and saying like, what can I do next? What does this trick look like? Yeah, maybe just talk to me a little bit more, like expand on creativity a bit.
I think joy and creativity go kind of hand in hand. If you really enjoy what you're doing, creativity comes easily. Um, so maybe that was the reason why I found it so accessible in biking, because it was something I really enjoyed, and it kind of was something where I just felt like I could free my mind and just be in the moment. Because over the years I've listened to a lot of and watched a lot of documentaries about other athletes and other sports, and they also speak a lot about creativity, but in a discipline where I just never thought it was accessible or like something that was uh, present. So I just think it's more like a state of mind. But more than anything, you just gotta be like, if you're doing something you love and you enjoy what you do and aren't too wrapped up on things that stress you out, I think creativity can come pretty easy if you just let yourself get in the zone and try not to get too distracted. And I think getting in the zone and that feeling we get from just zoning out and doing something we love is what makes people stick to sports. And it can be anything from the feeling like after doing a run in the woods to accomplishing a new trick. Like there's so many diverse and so many things I feel like in life that gives me that feeling, and uh, yeah, I like to put the word on it, but it gives me that joy.
Mm, yeah, it's kind of like an onion where the more layers you pull back, the more interesting something can be. And it happens for everything, like like even with running, like if you talk to a runner, they would be like, oh well, the way that your foot touches the ground, and then you
Yeah.
kind of lift off, and then like the different air temperatures and stuff like that. And maybe it would be interesting to kind of take a trick. I don't know if you've seen, there's like this YouTube series where they kind of look at a trick, or I mean sorry, some activity in like different levels of detail. And maybe if we took like a 360 and you just like took me through like a couple different layers of detail, like when you're first learning the trick, and then maybe you take it to a bigger jump, and then you say maybe I can add like another combo to it or something like that. I think that would be really interesting to hear about.
So for an untrained eye, a 360 of various a 360 on different axes might be looking similar, but when you're like I am, like I'm more than a decade into doing 360s. I do know I can watch someone try their first 360s and kind of already know what they're doing wrong or right, and everyone kind of have the same path of like you start out, you just kind of pulling the handlebars, going off the lip, and like twisting yourself as much as you can.
Oh.
And then just pray, pretty much. And then once you get comfortable with that and start getting around, you're still like at a very upright position. And that takes some time to get comfortable with. And the more comfortable you get with the 360, the more leveled out you will have your wheels. And once you kind of set with that, if you have a level 360 where like the front wheel and the back wheel aren't over dominant, you can start doing combos if you know how to do any of the selected tricks you want to put in the 360, of course. But there's also other ways of doing a 360. Like we have the flat spin 360s, we got the cork 360s, and it's still a 360. Like you leave the lip leaning towards one side and you land with in the same direction, but depending on how you lean off the lip, it will give you a different flick or a different spin. And it's kind of interesting because over time you learn to predict what's going to happen. You're going into a ramp and you can predict the speed you hit it with and the way the ramp will feel, but then you always have to adapt. You have your prediction of what it's going to be like and how it's going to feel, and then you just have to adapt to what's actually happening and like, how am I going to make this idea that I have reality, and like, how am I going to land on the wheels again?
Right.
And over time, you just get very, like, the bike almost becomes, it's almost like I have this fingertop feeling just as good in the wheels as I have in my hands. And I can feel when the wind hits, and I can feel like how the bike is getting affected by different elements. And it could be all from like not getting the correct pump to leaning up the lip differently or catching the handlebars in an awkward position. Like everything gets so in detail, like I struggle to explain it. And I think more than anything, people listening to me right now will struggle to understand, because it's just all very nerdy. And but it's like you say, like if you have an onion and you peel the layers, like it gets very complex. Like the more layers you peel, the more you just see there's just another layer. And then now when I've been doing biking for 10 plus years and been pushing myself over all those years, like first of all, just catching up to my peers, and then catching up to like my biggest idols, and then kind of pursuing the level beyond that, and like trying to come up with things that I didn't think was possible growing up. But now with all the elements involved and all these things, kind of a new trick arise just because it's kind of time for that trick to happen, because you know all the fundamentals in order to do it. You just haven't figured out how to piece it all together.
Yeah, man, what a cool way to think about it. Like, catching up to your peers and then your idols and then kind of pushing beyond that. I mean, because it feels like from the outside, at every time something new gets done, it's like, oh, that's the gnarliest thing that will ever happen. Somebody does a triple tail whip or a double back flip or whatever. Does it feel like that to you? Like when you see a world first get done, do you ever think that this is the gnarliest it could ever be?
No. I mean, there are rare cases where it's like this moment of like disbelief, belief, like seeing something being done the first time. But you kind of seen the lead up going into it for so long. Like I say, just as I can predict kind of what's happening when I lean off, like going into the ramp, you can kind of predict just from the fundamentals and all the puzzle pieces that already exist what the next steps are going to be. Like if you look at the very basics, like you have a combination of like, let's say someone do double tail whip, there's always going to be someone attempting to do another one.
Hmm.
And there is a level of there is a level where everything will kind of plateau unless we make a dramatic change. It would have to be,
Hmm.
I don't know, it could be all from like bigger jumps to smaller wheels, but then we're just on a BMX. But like
Huh.
as a mountain biker, you can look at a
Right.
BMX rider, and we as slopestyle riders can draw a lot of inspiration from what some BMX riders can do because a BMX is more lightweight, it's more nimble in air, and it's easier to spin around. So if I can like see someone on a BMX do a 360 triple tail whip, there's no reason why it wouldn't work on the mountain bike. There's just one thing that stands in the way, and that's it's a heavier bike. Um,
Yeah.
but when all what I was gonna get to with like how the level is gonna plateau is like once all the fundamentals are set, there's just gonna be one thing to do, and that's just to add another of something. Like you look at skiing and you look at like they can only grab so
Hmm.
many ways when they do it. I don't know, is it 1800s or 2160s or whatever it is now?
Right.
Like it's ridiculous. They are so in depth with what they do, but there's only so many ways to grab the skis that like to make it look different. So if you want to pursue and like do competition, um, you just gotta do another cork. Uh, like that's kind of the
Hmm.
next step there. But on the other hand, you can use all the fundamentals that are there and do something different with it. Because it's very easy to say next step is always just another spin or another this or another that. Sometimes what I've seen in mountain biking, the next step could just be to do it the opposite direction, or you instead of doing the tail whip first in the combination, you do it second, and all of a sudden you struggle with this trick
Hmm.
that just isn't really meant to work out as easily. Because if you look back 10 years and you see what tricks they did then it's like most of those tricks are still pretty standard today. Like
Hmm.
there's tricks that got done 10 years ago that are like still very high level today, but you can by looking in the past you can kind of predict the future, and by saying that I mean that you can see what tricks that were easy to accomplish back then or were possible to accomplish back then and look at what we've been able to accomplish since then, and you can kind of guess where we're going, but you never really know. There's always someone having a different idea in mind and coming up with something new, and that to me is what makes it all really exciting because I can sit here and I can look at what's been done and I can say this or that, but in the end none of that really matters if someone else or someone shows up and does something different. We as athletes in the sport predict the future by doing new tricks.
Yeah, that is so it feels like there's so much personality that gets put into it because as you were talking about like adding another flip or spin or whip into it, it seems like there are some riders like you have a Nikolai who is almost um takes that to the extreme to say like, okay, how many more things can I add onto this like in sequence? Whereas for you, it seems like that maybe that creativity comes from like like you said, like what are the fundamental building blocks and then how can I add them make this the most difficult thing possible, like doing opposite stuff, yeah, changing the order, and stuff like that. Is that kind of how you think about it? Like, is there a personality piece into it? And are you like looking, like actually deliberately thinking about like, how can I make this more difficult?
Um, no, I wouldn't say like that I'm like just like out there trying to make it as difficult as possible for me. Um, but like Nikolai and I, we have very different riding styles. Like he's super dialed on the big spins. He was the first one that did the 1080 or the front cork 1080 called a twister, and then he did the 1440, which is a front flip 1080. But it's so off axis when he spins it, it turns into 14, which is something that I
Wow.
probably will never do, but I enjoy
Wow. Yeah.
watching it. And the level of riding that he's been able to get to, and kind of figuring out that spin that wasn't really, from my understanding, it didn't exist before he started doing it. So he just kind of found his own path. Um,
Hmm.
and what everything boils down to in the end is that you work on a trick, but over time you get better at the trick. But also like every time you go do a trick, you find out either the way it's supposed to be and the way it's supposed to work, or you're finding out what doesn't work. Because either you succeed or you fail. Um, and when you fail, you can be like, okay, I learned this and that. That's not going to be helpful. When I try it next time, maybe I should do this or that differently. Um, but over time, when you get more and more comfortable with the tricks, you can see new doors opening up. Things that didn't used to be possible all of a sudden become possible because you can uh, kind of all the distraction and noise that can be present when you start learning something because your head is so wrapped up in just trying to do everything right to align properly, going off the lip the right speed, spinning the right way. But when all that becomes second nature and like um, kind of unconscious, that's when you can like be on top of the roller and be like, oh, maybe I can flip this around or I can try something different. Uh, so it's a matter of just pursuing and getting better on the bike that will open up those uh, things. Because I can sit like you can imagine all these potential combinations and tricks, but if they don't really synchronize on the bike, there's no way to really make it happen in a pleasant way. Because for me at least, like I want it to be feeling good, even like it's more important for me that the trick feels good uh, than the level of it. Because if it's like if it's a trick that doesn't feel good, like it's not like I want to do it over and over again. Um, and generally, when the trick feels good and you don't have to put a lot of effort into it, you just got to tick all the boxes of doing everything correct. Usually, it ends up looking clean as well because the less fluent the trick is, the more things are gonna be um, like it's more things that can be flaws, I guess.
Yeah, that's it's interesting to hear you say that because also on the other side of it is like you are competing and it
Yeah.
is a judge sport. And so you have on one hand it's almost like you have or you tell me maybe there's like no tension there, but it feels like there's tension there where you want this trick to feel good. You want to like put your personality into it and be creative. Um, but is the run and the tricks that you're doing, the training that you do, is it for the judges or is it for you?
For me, it's for me. Um, like the way I do it, it's for me, and that's the only way I would be able to do what I do, I think. Because there's too many things. Um, and I also think it's too risky to do it for someone else. Um,
Mm.
there's a lot of risk involved with pushing the limits. And if it wasn't due to like personal, I don't know, struggle to put a word on it, but if it wasn't if it wasn't something that I wanted to do, it wouldn't I wouldn't have been able to get here where I am today because it's
Right.
way too much effort that goes into it. But
Mm.
like you say, it's a judged sport, and with that, if you want to perform well, when I plan out my run, I try to plan it out as diverse as possible. I try to
Mm.
have as many difficult things in my run as possible. But what I struggle with sometimes is either it's the course that I feel like limits the the, the plan I had or what I wanted to pursue on that specific event, or it can be that I have like four really high technical combos that I want to put in my run, and I just gotta select three of them. Or if I do
Mm.
all four of them, I feel like my run gets very one-dimensional um, in one way at the same time as I'm pushing myself and what's possible on it. But there's many elements that goes into it. But for me, when I go ride every day, it's for myself and for my own development of getting better and like figuring
Mm.
out something I didn't know was possible yesterday, or just moving that bit extra towards what's next, which I a lot of times just don't know. Like you're just riding and you're doing your thing, and then all of a sudden you stand and you got two new doors to open in your imagination. Like all of a sudden, this one trick just seems really possible that I didn't think was possible before.
Yeah, it's I feel like people that is something that is so important. I mean, for all athletes, is like it's hard to beat. It's hard to even compete at a really high level if against someone, I guess, who is like truly has love for what they're doing, and like everything is fitting exactly what they want to do. Uh, I just have seen that so much, and it's been interesting being on the opposite side. Like racing for a long time, and now being on the other side of the tape at the races and seeing people's kind of personality when people are stressed and stuff like that. It feels like slopestyle mentally is one of the hardest things that you could do. I mean, you have these like two runs, and you only have, I mean, the Crankworx World Tours, there's only four of them a year right now. What I guess, what is that like? Like, just talk to me about the mental side of it, because I think for the layman, like it just seems so gnarly. Like it just seems insane.
Yeah, it is insane. And the more I do it, the more I come to realization, like come to realize how crazy it is. During the week of practice, you're competing yet against yourself as well as competing against what you believe the other riders are able to accomplish. Because if you haven't the tricks we do are so technical that you usually need more than one hit on a jump just to mentally prep for it or like feel it out. Let's say I want to do a 360 triple tail
Wow.
whip. Ideally, I would like to do a three whip first and then a three double whip and start doing enough of them to
Mm.
be at a point where I'm like, I can see myself doing other whip, but then you just got to commit to it. So it's not like I can get to contest, just cruise the course. I mean, I haven't tried, so saying I can't would be the wrong thing, but it's not something I would like to do, to be up top for your
You
first
want to do
competition run and you just watched everyone throw down and you just kind of guessing how the speed is going to work out when you toss yourself off these jumps and trying to do tricks that you haven't previously tried on the jumps. So yeah, it is really tricky. It is really tricky, and you want to like, for me, I want to do the most complex run I can, but I'm also like at this balancing act where I'm like, I think I can do this, but it's also like a matter of should I really push it that far? If I push it that far, I might not be able to get down the hill. So like, at what level, how much can I risk without risking it? Like how how technical can I get with my competition run without failing? And it's like this
yeah.
constant thing of like everyone, like let's say everyone's riding level is at 100, but during competition you have all these elements and stuff, everyone kind of drops down to 80. You can see and you can watch someone ride at 110% when they're back home, when they're prepping for the event and whatever, whatnot. But during the event, it's very rare that people are able to get to above, I would say maybe above 90% of their capabilities.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to mentally prep for an event like that because you're like, I know all these tricks I can do back home, but there's so many other factors that play into it. And like you mentioned, like the comparison to other like races and stuff, I can look with jealousy on that, but that's probably just because I'm not in depth enough of it and I haven't peeled enough layers of the onion to be like deep enough into it that I can really understand what I would pursue more or less. But when I look at racing, I can see like, oh, it's sweet. They show up to the top and they just gotta let go all the way down the hill. But
Yeah, totally.
that isn't the reality. Like I bet the racers or like racers also gotta prep. Like, okay, I know this berm is kind of soaked from all the rain. I kind of gotta enter it differently, and it's not like I I feel like the preparation are very similar for different sports. It it's just
Yeah, 100%.
diff, different mental battles. But when you look at a team sport like I don't know, American football or something, comes to mind just because I watched a Netflix series about it. But um, it's kind of sick because I can look on a sport like that and be like, oh, it's kind of sweet. The game is going down and you're kind of in it and you can correct it while it's happening.
Right. Yeah.
To
Yeah. Yeah.
to
You have
only
more
have
time.
two runs, to only have two runs, like actually, I would say we almost only have one run because it's like you have this one run you want to do. You might have something you want to tweak or add for the second run. But if you don't succeed with your the first run, it's probably going to be your first, like plan A is still going to be your plan for run two, unless your plan A was way beyond your level of riding. And you can see sometimes riders drop down. So like we only really have one plan when we show up to a contest. Like you want to do this
Right.
run, and it's yeah, it's frustrating. Like in Whistler when we had that much wind, and it was really frustrating when I crashed in practice. I was riding. I knew like it was too windy, but we're still all just trying to make it happen because we're all just really hungry for it and really badly want the contest to go down because it's what we love and we really enjoy what we do. But when you have an element like the wind play in, like something's gonna happen. And when we looked at that competition, a lot of riders got affected by it. And it's a pain to watch that because all I want to see is everyone just do all their best stuff, and it's like, but
Right.
that's just not the
Yeah.
reality. Like, there are all these factors that play in, and it's just competition, I would say. Like, when you got a competition, you have a set time. It's just kind of is what it is, and everyone's somewhat on the same uh, pl playing field, but it's different. If you drop early in a contest, it might be different to late in a contest when it comes to wind. And the same goes for racing. It might be raining when one rider
Mm.
drops and not for the other one. It it's just really unfair a lot of times, but at the same time it's competing, and it's kind of what we all, I wouldn't say agreed to, but have accepted at this
Yeah,
point.
right. Yeah, there are these uncertainties and things that you like, things that are out of your control that you just somehow have to kind of get your mind around. But it is interesting hearing you kind of talk about leading up to it. Is there a bit of like a chess game that's being played in early in the week? Like, are you not showing things or trying to throw people off on what you can do or what your run's going to be like? Is there anything going on like that?
For me, I wouldn't say so, but there is some of it for sure. Like, there is some of it, and I mean, it's just is what it is. Like, if I've been working on a new trick, I kind of want to save it for the contest. Like, it's for me, that's the sickest. If you can show up to an event and just one bang this new trick that no one's done before. Like, if you can do that, that's pretty cool. But then you're
Yeah.
just risking it all, like, because you don't really know if it's gonna work out. Because sometimes just trying it that one time in practice might help with your confidence and belief in uh, knowing it's possible. But sometimes it's just a case of like, am I really gonna risk this during practice and might
Hmm.
not be able to take part in the competition, or should I just try to land my first run? And if I need to try it for my second run, I do it. It just goes back to like the balance of like, at what level can I push myself without failing? And it's a
Right.
constant, super hard balance. And now the past couple of years, we had the same course at a couple of the events, and it's not like I can say that my competition run was better year by year. Um, but there were
Hmm.
different factors that played in, and some years I wasn't able to
Huh.
push myself as much as some other years, but they were beyond the level of tricks I did. There were a lot of other things accomplished and pushed. It might have been, I don't know, like Rotorua last year as an example. It was super rainy and we barely had any practice. And uh, to put a run down at that given day, that was a win. Like, that was just amazing in itself.
Right.
But I feel like as fans of the sport, and I can see like everyone just wants to know and see everyone just push themselves. But like I said before, it's just all these other factors that sometimes play in, but sometimes they don't, and we get an awesome show and everyone's delivering at their highest level, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's wild to watch. And I mean, switching gears a little bit, kind of taking all the stuff that we've been talking about. You're doing Rampage this year, and so it's even more uncertain, I guess. Like, the the thing that you're riding on is can change like run by run, I guess. It can dry out, there can be wind. um how I don't know, like, how do you feel about it? Like, just tell me your thoughts on Rampage as a whole.
Rampage as a whole, something that I don't really have a lot of experience with. I did my first time in 2019, and that's the only time. Ever since 2019, I've been wanting desperately to go back, but it's kind of been this weird overlap. First, we had a pandemic, and then it's been a schedule overlap for the past 2 seasons with Crankworx New Zealand as well as Crankworx Australia, which has been a bit frustrating because I really want to be at Rampage, and I wanted to be there for many years. But it's been hard to get back in due to the schedule changes and whatever whatnot. So to be back in the field this year is really exciting. It's a different year though, I would say. It's all like Rampage is really tricky when it comes to um, getting the right preparation for it. Like you show up and you build a course. If it's like the best thing is to show up with when everyone else shows up for the first time. But for the venue we are riding this year, it's the same as last year, and that venue was recycled from 2013 and 14. So there's already a lot of different
Mm.
paths down the hill that other riders already have selected. So it's going to be tricky to. It's going to be a challenge to find my own way down the hill and see what I can use from other lines that exist that no one else is riding or someone else might be riding. So um, we will see. It's a different event for sure, and it's definitely not slopestyle. So to be like prepping for it requires different things than for a Crankworx event.
I mean, is that something that you feel like you need to tick off in your career to win a Red Bull Rampage?
I don't feel like I need it, but I want it. Um, it's something that I've like long term like, but for me like Rampage this year and for the next couple like winning isn't really something that I have in mind. It would be sick to one day do it. Like I think anyone showing up to a contest would lie if they didn't say that they one day would like to win the event. Like winning the event is sick, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure, huh?
right now it's more about just getting all the building blocks in there and just getting used to what it's like to be out there and ride. I've been
Mm.
plan like this past month hasn't really been ideal when it comes to the rehab of my shoulder injury. So I haven't really had the big bike preparation as I would have liked to. But it just kind of is what it is. Over the years, I come to realize, or I come to see that you rarely ever get the cards dealt to you. Like you rarely get the cards you want dealt to you, you know? So you just got to make sure you make the best out of what you got and put it at a reasonable level for where you're riding at the moment of the competition.
I'm definitely looking forward to, seeing you out there. I know you're like not 100%, but I think that is like Rampage is one of those events where you see a decent amount of crossover from like a G or Bernard Kerr on the racing side, and then you have um, and then you have specialists like a Kurt Sorgi who is pretty much their only event is Rampage. So it's kind of just like this melding of different mountain biking disciplines almost.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it pretty cool.
Um, I had this idea to give you some words, and I thought it would be cool if you kind of responded to them in the way that you kind of think about yourself, and also like in relation to your sport. And I'll give you three of them, and we can like maybe just go through like one by one. And so the first one is motivation, because you've done so much and you are at the pinnacle and like pushing the limits, yeah, just what does that mean to you, and like how to maybe where do you draw from and how do you think about that?
Great question. Um, in one way, I know very well why I do it. On the other hand, I also don't, because when I when you when I reflect on it, I'm like, it's kind of crazy. I just ended up in the position I am in the first place. Um, but the only answer I have to why I keep doing what I do is because I deeply love it, and it's like, and I just kind of when I'm on my bike and I'm doing what I like to do on it and out riding, it's like in one way where I'm truly like fully at peace at the same time as I'm like in my creative zone, and like I feel like kind of, I wouldn't say I feel invincible against others, but I'm like invincible in my own bubble, like where I can
Mm,
just be myself, and I can just
totally.
zone out. And that for me is like, for me, the pursuit is to, like, as long as I find the process enjoyable, as long as I enjoy pushing myself, and as long as I and just enjoy the process, because it is a lot of boring tasks that come with the desire to be the best or keep pushing and year after year keep taking the same results or even more results. It's a lot of tasks that come at hand for like with that. So as long as I still enjoy it, I will do it. And yeah, that's kind of the motivation for me. Just stick to it for however long it lasts. And if that's like 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, I don't know. Like, I definitely won't be competing at the highest level in 20 years. But if I still enjoy,
You never
if
know.
I still in, you never know. Like, you look at Kelly Slater, it's a very different sport. But
Yeah, right. Actually.
if you go by his marks, I at least have another 25. But um, I believe that slopestyle is a bit different than surfing. But beyond competitions, like it's beyond competitions and beyond all the results and whatever whatnot that comes with it. It's just the process and the happiness and the just a cycle of like you're doing something you like, and you go out and you push yourself mentally. It gives you good mental health, and um, it's just a good life to live. And as long as I look at it that way and get that feeling from it, then I will keep doing it.
Yeah, that is that's amazing. So the second one is identity, and I feel like you touched on it a little bit there, but there's I think a lot of identities when I look at you that have kind of been like pushed on you a little bit. Like, people are like, oh, he's a prodigy. He's been, he's so young. He's doing this, and he's going to be one of the best. And then even myself, like introducing you as like he is the best slopestyle athlete. And I think as an athlete, you really have to have like a strong sense of that, and I think it does change. But maybe what does that mean for you? Do you have a really clear sense of identity, or did you ever lose it? Yeah, what does that word mean to you?
It's generally not a word that I use, I would say, because it's not something that I put a lot of thought into. More than I like growing up and riding, I felt like my riding and who I was were like hand in hand. It was the exact same. Like if I was feeling good on my good bike, I was feeling good uh, mentally as well, you know. But over time and with um, things that has happened, I feel like they are more and more separate now. Like my identity and what I do on my bike, like I have my riding identity and like who I am as a mountain bike rider, but I also have the private me, I guess to say, that isn't the one that shows up to the competitions. Or still, like, I mean, I'm still there, but I do feel like I have struggled to explain it, but they are not the same. Like who I am as an athlete and private is different. And what I struggle with is as well, some people I believe has a perception of how you should act or be in in my shoes, but that might just not be who I am, and that's sometimes just the way it is. And I feel like the more true to myself I can be, and over time just stick to the way I like to do things, the more authentic I'm gonna be. And I feel like that's really important to me, to just do what I actually enjoy doing, so it's authentic. And because I think identity wise, if you start doing things you don't like, it will boil down to other things not going the way you want.
100%. Yeah. And then the last one is progress. Maybe you could also think about this as growth. Like when I look at your career, and I mean your life in general too, like you've come back from an autoimmune disease, and I think at different points there were different levels of certainty around what you could do, at least like externally. So I guess, how important has that been? How important, like you talked about the process, like how important is the process and growth to you? And how do you think about that word?
In one way, it's the receipt for getting burnt out. Like if you have the desire to constantly progress, it's kind of the recipe for getting burnt out in a way. At the same time, as I look at things, like if you're stagnant, you're not, like you're actually, like if you're just staying where you are, you're not, if you're not growing, you're actually kind of going the opposite
Regressing.
direction. Like, yeah, like you
Hmm.
need to progress in order to keep living. Um, and when you start looking at it from that way, I think it's really different, because it might be that some people look at, like, if you constantly push yourself, it might be that um, there's just so many different ways you can look at what it is to actually progress, and what it means to you. And I think for everyone, it's just everyone just have to find their own recipe for it, and what that means for them. But for me, progressing and growing is something that if I can choose, it's something that I would like to do every day, because you, the more you learn, the more you understand how little you know. And I think that's interesting, because you can be dead certain that you know something really well, and then you grow and you progress and you learn new things, and you just realize that you were an idiot a couple of days ago, that you didn't realize this sooner.
Yeah.
So uh, when you go through things like that, you kind of wish you always could be a couple of days ahead, or a couple
Right.
of steps ahead. And yeah, for me, it can be all from learning, I don't know, to fix my car, to, I don't know, going on a new trip. There's always aspects in life where you can grow.
Yeah, what a perfect answer. I have a couple of questions, a little bit lighter for you. I realized that you kind of talked about this separation between the athlete you and the personal you, and I feel like you're one of those people that we don't know a whole lot about. So I wanted to yeah, get to know Emil a little bit more. First one is what's something that you're passionate about that people can't Google about you?
Can't Google about me.
Yeah, I cannot.
um, Great question. Um, Something I'm passionate about that you can't Google. Ev- I kind of think I reckon most people can Google that though, but in one way or another, maybe they can't. But I've been ever since I was a kid. I've been really interested in um, just. I always had this constant conversation and like thought process with myself of like, how can I do something different to the like. Let's say I buy a bicycle part, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if like the perfect example is like my signature grips with senses. Uh, I just had a honest talk with like me and Cam. I can't remember, but it all started with like I just had this thought of like I would like this grip to be this way and that way, and I think it could perform this way. And then we started a process, and that's something that I really enjoy because I can take all my knowledge that I've gained through biking and create a product that I think improves on the current field of grips on the market. And That's something like outside of my athlete self, uh, really enjoy just to
Hmm.
product development. And it has to do with like making my own shoes together with etnies and all these things. So that's something that I'm really passionate about and that I sometimes spend almost too much time on. But I enjoy it.
And then what do you feel actually, yeah, so you've gotten to do a lot of stuff. I think as an athlete, you, like so many of us, get to do a lot of stuff. Is there a memory that kind of sticks out in your mind, or something that you tell your friends or somebody that you meet, um, something that you've done that you'll remember for the rest of your life, like some sort of, yeah, like happy moment or trip that you got to go on or experience that you've had, doesn't even, can be on the bike or doesn't even have to be, but is there something like that?
There's been multiple. I think one of the most recent ones were like one of these, I don't know, that a lot of people just have on their bucket list of things, and that was to like scuba dive at one of the coral reefs in Australia.
Mm,
Like a super cool thing. Like that's
yeah.
definitely rare to experience, and it's pretty cool. And then last year I was in Australia. I just got to see crocodiles. Like I never seen one in real life until last year, and that blew my mind away. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of things, and I'm generally pretty bad with doing all these activities around traveling because you kind of just travel somewhere to go compete and you kind of just in and out
Totally.
because you don't really have a lot of time to do other things. But it's definitely cool once the opportunity comes to go see something around the area where you travel. And yeah, that's just the most recent ones. There's been way too many to like mention even, but it's all from like the first time I went to the States to my first time in Canada. Like there's so many good memories that have happened the past couple of years due to mountain biking in general, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And then Emil, what advice would you give to young people looking up to you?
What advice to young people? Don't be like me. Try to take. Um, I think one of the most important things growing up is to take inspiration from people you look up to, but put your own twist on it. Because if you can be yourself to 100%, you got no one else to impress. You got no one else to, look for. I don't know. Like if you just can be fully confident in yourself and take inspiration from other people, that's a really good base to have, I think. Because no one can be you but you, and it's, for me, that would have been something that I would have liked to hear at a young age, because I think especially in slopestyle, like you can be unique, and you can be like, or just in life in general, like as long as you're true to yourself, you're one of a kind, and that goes for everyone. So
yeah. And our last traditional closing question, Emil, is who inspires you?
Who inspires me? There are way too many to mention, but there are many people in the mountain biking scene and just overall in life. I've put it, mentioning even 5 would be taking away from the hundreds of people that have inspired me growing up. But the typical people that inspire me is people that push themselves, and just go do what they love to do. And to me, that's inspiring. People that actually try their best to just live a meaningful and happy life.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Emil, so much for coming on. This has been amazingly fascinating and interesting. So, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for good questions.
You've been listening to You Inspire Us, a podcast brought to you by Thule. This was the final episode in our bike edition, but don't worry, we'll be taking a short break and then it's back for season 2. The next edition is all about the great outdoors. We'll be talking to some of the most adventurous athletes from across the globe, from a big mountain skier to a big wave surfer. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss what we have in store. Learn more about the Thule ambassadors and get behind the scenes content by following us on Instagram @Thule or on Facebook at facebook.com/Thule. This episode was hosted by me and produced by Saga Ringmar. Lena Nilsson assisted with social media, cover art was created by Martin Bergstrom, and intro and outro music were written by Kluben. Special thanks to our executive producer, Tina Lucilius. Thanks for listening.